I've got a group that I get together with. There's four of us, being intentional and thoughtful about who's really in and who like pursue spending time with. And it
Mhm.
started in my 20s. So this is big part of like those when I was rethinking all this stuff. This guy was a big part of it. In fact, I was just on the phone with him right before we recorded this. And we went to high school together, and we started getting deep and connecting, and we went off and had adventures in college, and we started reconnecting. But he was that guy. He's like, dude, this guy's got heart and dreams and values, and you know, we were 20 sums, did some stupid stuff together, but he was also like, man, I want to be more like this guy. And then honestly, I don't know, probably our sophomore junior year, maybe 3-4 years later, we were like, you know, I just don't have other friendships like this. But we were in different states. We'd both gone to different states to go to college. We hardly ran across each other anymore, bumped into each other, and we're like, man. And he just said, well, dude, if it's really this valuable, why don't we pursue it? Like, why don't you and I just put it on the calendar and talk to each other on a regular basis instead of hoping we get around to calling each other? This is especially back in the days before cell phones, right? Like if you called me and I wasn't in, and then I'd call you back and you weren't in, and it might take weeks for us to both be in and get a phone call. He's like, let's just pick a time, and every couple of weeks we'll talk. And I was like, all right. And that grew into another guy, until now there's four of us, and we get together. In fact, he and I talked one-on-one just before this. And literally, it's funny you mentioned this. The next thing I'm going to do after we finish talking here, in about 10 minutes, I'm getting together with the other three guys, and we're talking about an annual retreat that we're going to take. And we get together and we talk about our lives and our plans. And we literally bring like a life plan together, and we say, hey, what are you doing with your business? What are you doing with your health? What are you doing with your family? Like, and we challenge each other, and we celebrate, and we eat too much steak and have just a weekend away. Yeah, I don't just happen to have a couple of good buddies like that. Like, it has become one of the most important, insightful, energizing, like most of my big progress and insights of how I build my life and family have come out of this stuff. So dude, yes. Don't cross your fingers and hope you bump into the right people, right? Even when they're out of state, if you got the right guy, got the right gal, like go way out of your way, chase them down, pursue that, get what little bit you can with them. Because those deep relationships are they're more satisfying and they're more insightful, right? Like I learned from them.
Listen to the vibes.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Listen to the Vibes. And I'm very privileged to have Mr. Scott Wozniak here with me.
Hey, man.
Scott, from my understanding, you try to help improve not only people, but their brands as well.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well,
I've had a crazy fun ride in my life. With troubles and you know, negative turns, but honestly a ton of unexpected opportunities that I didn't earn and didn't even know existed. And early on, I got exposed to some pretty high impact, world-class level folks, from their individual life to some epic brands. And in the process of that, man, I just kind of got excited and passionate about what the best do. And so for a while, I'd say the first phase of my life was like, figure out, how do I become like these people, right? How do I step up like my heroes? And then eventually, somewhere along the way, maybe some maturity, some gifting, I don't know. It's an interesting conversation of how I figured it out. But at some point, I was like, I think I'm more excited about helping other people figure this out instead of just doing it all by myself. Like I checked a bunch of those boxes. And now, I still push on my own life, and I still dream, and I'm still building companies and doing my own projects. But man, more and more and more, I get excited about helping other people figure that out too. In fact, the way I say it, slightly melodramatic, but it works for me, right? I don't know if it works for anyone else. But I say, I feel like my calling and my passion really is to be Merlin to the Arthurs of the world, right?
Oh.
Like they're going to I got my own version of Camelot and had some fun. But now I'm like, you got a vision, you got a dream, you want to build something epic and legendary and grand. Like, hey man, how do I come alongside you and help you build your Camelot? And that's man, as fun as it was building my own Camelot, I'm finding it even more satisfying and fun to build other people's Camelots too. So yeah, it's a huge part of my life these days.
well, there's folks that have gone and met with people like you, and they get the advice, and they're driven, they change and become successful. But they kind of keep that to themselves. I mean, not everyone, but there's a huge percentage of people that just keep it to themselves. What inside of you drives you to actually help others to do that? Because you could have easily done the same thing, got the advice and just took off on your own.
Yeah. Yeah. And there was a period of time, I mean, I'll confess, I skimmed over that, like, and then I decided to help people. Man, there was a season I hit a certain level and honestly was like, I'm done, man. Like, this is awesome. I reached the dream. I loaded up some video game supplies and just like played video games, slept in till 10 every morning, ate whatever the smack I wanted, and just like enjoyed my life. And it was good for a season. But I think of probably three things. I don't know if I ever articulated it quite like this. It's a good question, man. Three things came together to pull out. One of them bluntly was somewhat of a boredom. Like there is a joy in pursuit. There's a joy in the building, in the learning, reaching, the stepping into the unknown that I missed, right? I mean, oversimplify, the first piece is I got bored just sitting around doing it all by myself. Like, it's got to be more than this. And I had buddies, and so I wasn't literally alone, but like I'd built my Camelot and I'm done. So a little bit bored. The second was I had some pretty awesome mentors who poured into me, and there was a sense of gratitude, but also following their example. Like, I want to be like that guy. Well, what's that guy doing? I wasn't the only person they mentored. Like, they found another person and another person. So like, give you a couple examples. There's some gratitude / responsibility that I felt for that whole process. So like, yeah, I mean, my career's had a crazy ride. Let me pause and give you a little overview of the zigzag turns I've been on. I started when I was a kid as a child actor, singer. I mean, I did my first speaking role when I was 4 on a play. They gave me a lead role and I was on stage, and everyone's like, hey, what do you say to a 4-year-old who doesn't throw up, right? You're like, hey, good job, buddy, right? And,
Right.
with all my 4-year-old insight, I was like, listen, everybody tells me I'm pretty good at this. I should do more. So like I said, Mom, I want to do that again and again and again. By the time I was 10, I was doing private lessons and winning regional competitions. By the time I was in high school, I was on NBC and a part of a music group that traveled internationally and recorded CDs. And so like some pretty crazy stuff. And I had people, and to be clear, I did not come from a family of performers, and I didn't even come from a family with much money. I mean, my parents have done well for themselves now, but they'd kind of, long story short, started over. I moved to another state, didn't have any family support at the time, and just like start from scratch, we had nothing. And so when I say nothing, like I grew up in South Florida for the first part of my growing up. And just to give context, like we lived in a house without air conditioning in South Florida, right?
Oh man.
If you can afford anything, right, you get air conditioning. We couldn't afford it. So we had floor fans, the box fan. I'd put a box fan next to my bed and go to sleep. And that was how I had tried to stay cool. I mean, so I say all that to say, like, we started with basics, but people saw something in me and did things like, hey, we're going to pay for him to go to that program. I'm going to pay for him to fly on that trip. I'm going to pay for him to get private lessons. Most of that stuff we couldn't afford, and somebody else sponsored me. And like, I didn't even know to ask for it. And they said, hey, there's a program you need to come to. Don't worry, I'll pay for it. So I had some really cool, generous mentors. And then I get into the next stage of career, and I got a degree in musical theater performance, started doing professional work, and said, I don't really want to do this for the rest of my life. I liked it, but I didn't love it. I started to dabble with writing and directing, but long story short, I started also on the side working for nonprofits. I worked with some youth programs and some sports programs, and I just started loving the pouring into people, right? And I was like, the satisfaction, I to a certain extent had made it. This is some of this transition, right? Like I'm sleeping in till whenever I want. I do a show in the evening. I go party with my buddies. Like I was not a multi-millionaire, but I had enough money to do live the fun I wanted to have, and chill and relax. And my job was people clapping for me. It's pretty fun, right? And it was like, this isn't really it. And I found more joy in pouring into these people. So there was an interesting like parallel life where in the day I would go serve the nonprofit, and the night I would go perform, and slowly realizing I think I'd rather go pour into people. Now, that's still not what I do today. Now I'm a business consultant helping build leaders in their companies, right? But the shift was I worked for 3 or 4 nonprofits, and I worked for some really nice guys with really big hearts who were really bad leaders. I mean, they meant well and they cared. And honestly, they were good buddies, right? Like to this day, I'd still go hang out and get a drink with them. Like they're cool dudes. And they were terrible leaders at the time. Maybe some of them have gotten better, 1 or 2 have not. But like no one had taught them. Honestly, no one had taught me. Frankly, I should probably put myself in that bucket too. I didn't know what I was doing. I cared. I tried hard. But like one guy micromanaged everything. And so nobody felt like they could make any decisions. And we all just kind of sat around waiting. I think he would read our emails. Like, hey, no, you need to write the email this way. It's like, can't even send emails without letting him look at it. Versus another guy who wouldn't give us any direction at all. And so we had like 4 different conflicting projects, and like, we don't have money for all 4. We'll figure that out later. Start like, what are we doing here? So not moral failures, right? Not jerks, but like this is, and I didn't have words for it. And finally, one of my mentors who's pouring into me saying, I see potential in this young guy. He gave me a business book. And at first I was like, listen, I'm like a creative, ministry nonprofit guy. Like I don't do this stuff. And he's like, read the book. And I stayed up reading that book till like 2 a.m. like it was a novel, dude.
Wow.
I didn't have words for it. And I thought business was math. Like I thought it was accounting, right? And I'm like, that sounds boring. And then you get to like, no, it's leadership and people and systems and branding. And I was like, oh, so honestly, I was kind of shaking my fist. And this is the third piece where it all comes together, right? So I'd gotten bored. I'd start trying to figure out how to help other people. I ran across some bad leaders. And out of this frustration, I was like, it's not right that these causes are held back for bad leaders. Somebody ought to do something about this, right? And it was like, so I happened to be a Christian. I was praying and thinking, and it kind of felt like God and the universe was just elbowing me going, yeah, somebody ought to do something, right? Like if only somebody helped. And I was like, oh, wait, I could do this for my life. And I go back to some of my mentors and they're like, oh yeah, this is part of my career. People, I'm doing it free for you, but people pay me to coach. My mentors were coaches. My mentors were consultants and trainers and strategy guys. And I was like, oh, I could do that for a living and help people. And instead of it being a side gig that I do as a give back. So the third thing that came together, honestly, was frustration, like a legit discontent with the world, like a righteous indignation, maybe. Like it's not right, pounding the table. And it's really interesting when no one of those things by itself was like, I'm changing just because I'm frustrated, or I'm I'm bored, I guess I'll go be a consultant, or like it's when they all started merging. It was not a single day, but there was a season, probably 6 to 9 months, that I came out the other side of it going, man, I would love to do this with my life. Like, what if I could be, and again, the Merlin, I didn't have the words for it then. I didn't say it quite that way, but I'd say within a year or 2, I started using this phrase, Merlin to the Arthurs of the world. Like, yeah, man, I had guys do that for me. I kind of got bored just with my own Camelot. And man, somebody started giving me tools and programs. So I eventually go back to school. I got a master's in leadership from a business school, started doing coaching, got certified as a coach. One thing led to another, and launched off and have helped a lot of folks build some pretty cool things. So yeah, man, it's I'm way off the trail, right? Like this is not the plan that I expected. But I really like it off trail here, like kind of figuring it out as I go. It's been, the highs are higher, the lows are lower, and it just feel more alive, man. It's just like everything's just kind of dialed up on its vividness. So yeah, man, I'm loving it. It's been a ride.
Well, it's kind of amazing that you start out with this one dream and you think you're going to go in this one direction, and yet circumstances send you in another direction. You end up happier than what you probably would have been going the other way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
I think by a fair margin. I wasn't horribly unhappy, but I'm way happier now.
oh
Very
yeah.
much so.
Well, and like you, I'm a Christian, and I believe God, he sends us on this journey, and what you think is that journey
Yeah.
is something totally different.
Yes.
And you know, God wants us all to go out and spread the word, but it doesn't necessarily have to be you going and preaching. So
Yeah.
from what I understand, you pretty much use the word of God in what you do. And
Yeah. So
even well,
keep going.
but even though you're not preaching, you're still sowing those seeds of righteousness with the word of God.
Yeah.
And changing people's lives that way.
Yeah, 100%. So Jesus, obviously the ultimate hero of mine,
Right.
Jesus talked more about things like bringing the kingdom of heaven, is what he called it, to earth, than he did talk about like salvation in the afterlife. Now, he did talk about getting saved in the afterlife, but he spent a lot of time saying things like, Lord, may your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. How do I bring the kingdom here? And so I feel like that's been the kind of impact I'm called to have in the world. Yes, that I had the chance to talk about basic faith principles and help people like encounter God for the first time. Glad to do that. But really where I think I'm wired, where my unique calling is like, okay, so now what? Like I'm here on the planet, what do I do with my life? And one example of that is this is classic stuff. Like, again, I can't claim credit for this. This is the unexpected, generous blessings. I happened to go to high school. So we moved at the end of high school to Atlanta, Georgia. So I grew up South Florida, Fort Lauderdale area, moved up here to Atlanta. That's where I'm at now. So I finished high school here, and I happened to go to a small little private Christian school. And again, scholarship. We couldn't afford it. And somebody literally offered, is anonymous. I can't say who this one is. I literally don't know, but somebody anonymously gifted me a free ride to this crazy elite school. And I say that because some of the family in the school is a family that's called the Cathy family, and they own this little bitty joint called Chick-fil-A that some folks may have heard of.
Wow.
So the Cathy family and I have been friends for 25-ish years now. I mean, they're my boys. Now there's a big crew of them. Like Gen 4 is becoming adults, Generation 4. But Generation 3 is about my age, and we play board games and tennis and go on ski trips, and like they're my buddies, right? Now back then it's classic God unexpected stuff, right? I was like, hey, I'm gonna go be a star. Good luck with your little mall restaurant company, right? I hope you guys make it. Yeah, I think they're gonna make it. They're okay. So then I go off and I do all this stuff, and then I finally become this leadership consultant strategy guy. And I had gone off to Virginia Beach for my master's degree, and I met my wife out there, and she was in the master's program with me. And so we had married, had our first couple kids. I'm running a leadership strategy company out there. And the Chick-fil-A buddies, I'm back visiting Atlanta, and they're like, wait, what are you doing now? Because you're not, oh no, I'm totally different. And they're like, oh, hey, maybe you could help us. And I'd say this long rambly thing is, one, I didn't know that opportunity existed. You never know where old stuff will suddenly reemerge in a new light. And two, and you want to talk about ministry. I was thinking about, how do I make an impact on the world, right? How do I spread the light and be salt and all that fun stuff that the Bible talks about? How do we do good in the world? And then I run across a fast food joint. I mean, it's fast, it's fried chicken and waffle fries and, salads. I mean, it's good stuff, but like most people would not say that is a great noble cause on the world. And then you get to know what they're really doing. And I just got to tell you, it's even cooler than people think from afar. Like they're the real deal. They're who they are as people, the kind of foster care programs and feed the homeless and education for kids and father-son events. And I mean, like the thousands of things they do to pour into people and make the world a better place. And they're not perfect, and they're individuals who make mistakes, but
of course,
as a force in the world, they have a massive positive impact. And it was a huge revelation for me. Like, because at first, I mean, I'll confess, they said, hey, let's talk. And I blew them off for a month, right? Like,
wow.
my wife, I'm like, I mean, they want me to send them times. I haven't gotten around. like, yeah, I don't want to work I didn't do all this to work at fast food, right? I'm like, come on. And my
Right.
wife's like, doesn't hurt you to have a conversation. Like, find out what they want you to do, find out what the role is. Like, at least you can have one phone call. Like, okay, fine. And I was blown away. By the end of that call, it's like, okay, so how do and you want me to do what? And it was a really cool role, but all this is a long rambly reply to be like, there's a lot of ways to do good in the world beyond the Sunday morning sermon, right? I mean,
That's right.
I'm glad somebody's doing that. That we need those fundamentals, but now we got to show up and live in the world, live in a way that even doing basic stuff like making food for other people to eat can be done. They talk about, I'll give you one quick example of like how they're making a positive difference in the world, and it's a ministry even in fast food. Well, Dan Cathy, their chairman, he talks a lot about, he's the son of the founder, how the word restoration is the same root word for restaurant. Like, and we want to be a little oasis of restoration, he says, a place where they can refill physically, emotionally, relationally. Like, we just a little spot where we can help people catch their breath and refuel before going out in the world. And that's how we serve the world. And the roots of hospitality is that kind of, it's like, dang it, there actually is a nobility in fried chicken and a salad, right? Like,
Right.
okay. And so like and I'll put it this way, when I started my own company, I remember thinking like, okay, do I need to talk about some sort of noble cause? Do I need to pick my title and be like, making the world a better place consulting or something lame like that? And one of my mentors said to me like, dude, I don't care what you call it. The question is, are you going to actually show up and operate differently?
Right.
You could put a big cross and say it's Jesus Consulting Services, right? I mean, it's the bad branding idea, by the way, but yeah, you could do that. And if you operate like everyone else, like, what's the point? Like, that doesn't make any difference in the world. I don't care what you call yourself. The question is, are you going to actually run yourself in a way that cares for your people, cares for your clients, and actually leaves a positive mark on the world? And that's what I saw places like Chick-fil-A do. And so I got to be a part of the leadership team and help build a ton of their stuff macro-wise for them. And then in the process, I mean, I learned more there than I did in my master's program, probably times 10. And then I started helping other companies, and that grew into my own company, helping people. And yeah, man, I see people make the world a better place by showing up and doing the most mundane, regular industries. But the way they show up is so profound. It's changing lives. It's changing the world, man. And I see a lot of people, even in really sexy industries, doing cool, fancy things, but grinding themselves, grinding their team, kind of bare minimum, surviving on frustrated customers that are stuck. I mean, and it's like, you look cool, but the truth is everyone else kind of feels worn out by the time we're done working with you. And I'm just so much more alive when we do it well. Now, it's also pretty fun when you get to places like Disney, the theme parks, Disney, the conglomerate, that is a whole, that's a hit and miss, man. There's some mess.
Don't get me started on that subject.
Agreed, but their theme parks, I've gotten to go behind the scenes and work with some of their theme park leaders. Their theme parks are bananas good, man. There's nothing like it in the world. And the magic that they create and do it on purpose. And so when you get stuff like that, you can have the sexy and the high excellence, noble way of doing it. But man, I also have seen some pretty cool, fancy software companies that grind, and some like plumbing companies that are just joy to work with and have raving fans. And so, yeah, I think there's a lot of ways to show up and make the world a better place. And Sunday morning's one beautiful way, but it is a thin slice of all the possible options.
And people are really attracted to the sexy and the bells and the whistles and the fancy this and the fancy that. But if there's no heart behind it, it's just like getting that new toy at Christmas time. How many times you seen a kid, they get this cute little toy with all the bells and whistles, as I said, and they play with it for a while, and then they get bored. And next thing you know, it's just laying in the corner and they're playing with the box,
Yes. No, dude, it's so true. So my kids are like middle school, high school age. But my brothers both have kids that are younger. And one of my brothers, I mean, just like as a, less than year old running around at the moment. So We were literally just talking last Christmas over how this works. And they said two things. One, they played more with the box. And two, one of my sisters-in-law was like, well, if I could just confess, we found some old toys we gave them that they forgot about. And we put them back in the box, taped it back up. She's 2. She has no idea what's going on. Like, oh, check it out.
Perfect.
And she still played more with the box than the toy, man. Yes, the simplest things done well are so much more satisfying. And I think that's true, not just for kids, man. Us as grown-ups, right? We get excited about things like a fancy car or a big house. And I gotta tell you, like I've had some success. Even in terms of like one of the best new investments, like I put some money in, like I did in a big upgrade. It was not a big car. You know what it was? It was my socks, man. I got really nice socks. That's
Really?
it. It's like, dude, I only have, and I got like, I don't know, it's like 20, 25 pair total. I've got two brands and that's it. And man, I only have socks that are awesome to wear. And I think I find more joy in having like, they're $12 socks, man. I mean, this is pretty big time, right? Like $12 socks feel amazing. I think we miss the joy of these fundamental everyday goodnesses, thinking that we got to have something because I don't know, maybe it's just me, dude. But I know that temptation. I don't want to say this like I'm high and mighty, like I've never been tempted. No, I've tried both. And what I think I found is when I did the big fancy stuff, I don't know what it is for others, but I can say for myself, a lot of what was driving it was a status insecurity, right? Like others will like me and I will finally feel good about myself if I have these big public things. And then what do you know? You get there and you have the thing that's supposed to make me finally feel awesome. And it turns out that's not actually what makes me feel awesome. And now I'm doubly bad. One of my favorite quotes on this is Jim Carrey, the comedian, right? He said, I wish everybody could become rich and famous so they would discover that it does not provide any happiness.
That's right.
It's like, we keep thinking, man, if I could just get there, then that's where my happiness will come from. And I know I've tasted it. I'm not an epic billionaire. I'm very comfortable, but I work with epic billionaires, a lot of them. And let me just tell you, they're not happier than the general population unless they first figured out something at their core. The Cathys are awesome. They're an exceptionist, but the Cathys are just good people 25 years ago when they were successful, but not epic.
Right.
And they've put more work into their family and their character development than they have their business. Their business is awesome, but I'm more impressed with the intentional family and heart development they've done. And that's part of the wake-up call. Like, in fact, if anything, I'd say once you get to a certain level of money and success, it's harder because the pressure of all that is a real thing, man. And I've heard people complain why, like, oh, you poor little rich baby. Like, okay, yeah. There are definite, the vacations are much nicer, right? Like that's definitely true.
Oh, yeah.
But like things like Thanksgiving dinner or Christmas that we just kind of went through the holiday season here recently, you get a fight. A friend of mine was talking about some of their kids fighting, right? And you put like a $10 million inheritance behind that fight. And suddenly now this is like epic blow ups, shouting, crying, manipulations. It's like, you just ruined Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Take that money out of the picture. Now, like, we had a little fight and you go apologize and everybody's fine with it. Nobody stresses. It actually does make some things harder. So it's not a guarantee that it's bad, but yeah, anyways, all that to say, yeah, man, rich and famous, big status. I chased it for a while. I got enough taste of it and then saw my friends go to the extreme levels. And I was like, one of my high school buddies, my all-time best friend growing up for the first season, my first real best friend, he went on to become a billionaire and literally dead because of it.
Oh, no.
Committed suicide and like the pressures and the stress in his 30s. And so like I've seen it. And I'm saying like, oh no, they were a little sad at Christmas. Like I've seen it wreck families and literally have suicides because of the pressures. He did not develop enough of the heart character to handle his money. So that's a whole story, but like it's bananas, man. Yeah. Fancy status. That's not where happiness is. That's not where joy is. I find it in little things and in serving other people, man.
the Bible says that the root of all evil is the love of money. It's not
Mm.
money itself, it's the love of money.
That's a good catch. That makes a difference.
And I preached for about 5 years, and I stepped away from it. And my grandmother passed away this last year,
Mm.
and I got to go up and preach a sermon that I haven't done in a long time. I was nervous. I
Sure.
I prayed about it, and then what was on my heart, I felt that was what I needed to preach, and I felt that's what my grandparents would have wanted me to say.
Mm.
When I got up and talked, I talked about how, people, as soon as someone passes away, it seems like the first thing through their mind is, what am I going to get out of this?
Mm.
And that's sad.
Ah.
And I saw this with my dad's side of the family when my great grandparents passed away. It was just a free for all. Everybody get what they can get, and then the family just didn't talk anymore. We didn't get together for Christmas anymore or Thanksgiving or anything. My great grandparents were the glue, and once the glue was gone, everybody went their own direction. So I preached on that. And don't think about stuff. Think about the times you had with this person, the love, the joy, and come together as a family and stay together. I said my biggest fear is that what's going to happen to my mom's side of the family, what happened to my dad's side. And lo and behold, I'm not going to say which relative, but I have a relative that all they cared about was what my grandparents had left behind.
Okay.
And my mother tried to make it as even as possible. But I want you to know, my mother, she spent the last, what's it been, 30 years, I believe, of her life living with my grandparents and taking care of my grandparents,
Yeah.
helping with the bills, the grocery shopping, the whole thing. And yeah, my mom, she would loan us money when we were in hard times, but I also paid that money back. And it was my grandparents' money, mind you, but I did pay it back. But I felt like my mom should have got the majority of the inheritance. One, she was the oldest child, and two, she spent her life, she didn't go out dating or anything. She lived with my grandparents, and she was always there. And now that relative, they don't have anything to do with us anymore. They weren't there for Christmas this year. The last conversation that I even had with this person was, did you get any money from, grandma and grandpa? Did your kids get anything from grandma and grandpa? Like, well, yeah, but I said, but we pay it back. And I just got the phone slammed down and all upset. And that's why I'm trying not to get choked up about this, because it is upsetting.
But it's real, man.
But yeah,
They've
the
done is
stuff doesn't mean anything. It comes and goes.
that's right. They traded some money for family relationships.
Exactly.
Like that there's almost no amount of money in the world that's worth that trade, man.
Thank you.
And it's so silly how dumb we get focused on that. And I'm telling you, I've seen people who have a pile of money and nobody to share it with.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's worse. I think it's far worse. The emptiness of that is it's a wake-up call. And maybe one of the blessings God's given me is the ability to see that in other people before I got there, like kind of learned the lessons while I was on my way up, both from mentors. But again, my first best friend, I mean, super best friend, it's a crazy story, but by the time he was 30, he was a billionaire. And so and he also didn't have much growing up. We both came from not much in terms of finance families. But to see the way he got there and the ride and all that, he didn't pick family and character and God along the way. And so by the time he got there, Yeah, man, it's not a good trade. It is not worth it. It's it's funny because what we think about is we think money's the solution. But right, it's the love of money's not in and of itself good or bad. I mean, I would much rather have awesome family, awesome friends, and nice socks, right? Sure, let's go for both. But if you got to pick, there's no question which one is much more satisfying.
It's true.
What's the point of this whole thing? And if you want to think from a Christian perspective, man, this isn't even the ultimate life itself, right? Like, I mean, this is just the first chapter. We've got eternity of awesomeness coming. And so, yeah, I'll say this, one of the other factors, I've seen this happen a lot in business and with family. It's the difference between the abundance and the scarcity mentality. Have you heard these terms before?
Oh, well, I mean, know what they mean, but that specific term, no.
The scarcity mentality is the idea, like there's a fixed pie, there's a fixed amount. And if you get any more, then that means I'm getting less. And so the only way for me to get enough is to fight and compete and make sure nobody else takes mine. The abundance mentality is like, you and me are standing at an epic buffet of pies, more pie than we could eat if we both tried, all day long. And so like, if you grab an extra slice, bro, there's still like 73 other pies sitting around.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm not hurting. Like, yeah, here. In fact, I'll give you some off of my plate because I can just go grab some more pie. The abundance mentality is there's more than enough. There's not just enough, there's more than enough. And the scarcity mentality says there might be enough, there might not even be enough. And so in the scarcity mentality, any money you got from grandma and grandpa must mean I'm worse off, right? And it gets to this nasty, and it's at the root of it, it's a fear. It's fear and insecurity saying, if I don't fight for my own, if I don't grab and get mine, then somebody else will. And if you win, I'm losing. It's like, there's no way for us to both win, right? Fixed pie. And I think that's not a biblical understanding of life in the world.
No.
I mean, in this life alone, God shows again and again his generous grace, his love, his extravagant gifts. Like there's verse after verse in my life is story after story of God's faithfulness. Like, what if you knew he was going to be a good father no matter what, right? And then you got to throw eternity on top of this. And the idea that if you do actually submit and bring Jesus as your savior, we get heaven and like infinite abundance. And so suddenly you're like, well, if that's actually true, then who cares who has nicer socks right now? Right? Like,
right.
We might both be able to get nice socks, but even if we don't, right? Like, who cares? This is going to be a tiny little eye blink out of an infinity of adventures.
Yep.
Like, would I really risk relationship with you, who that is brother in Christ, man? I think we're both going to get to hang out in heaven. In fact, hey, let's do that again. Let's do some more podcasts in heaven. You and me, right?
There we go.
We got all the time we want, and we get to play forever and enjoy and relax and everything taken care of. And so like, if you actually believe that, then I suddenly find all these little squabbles here, the ones that I even get worked up over, like, dude, why am I making a big deal out of this? Abundance mentality. There's plenty. Hey, let him have more socks. He's going to have a great time. Give him more money. God's going to take care of me. I'm not in trouble. And man, that has been life-changing. When again, as one of my mentors really challenged me on that, when I was starting to I was one of my early leadership roles. I was kind of moaning and complaining and being really competitive because I was thinking, like, if that guy gets it, I'm not, right? I'm losing if he gets the promotion and I don't. And I had a really serious, like, finger in my face wake up call. Be like, abundance or scarcity, buddy. Your life will be radically different if you start down this path of scarcity, zero sum game, his win is your loss kind of nonsense.
I get just as much of a joy out of somebody else that they come into their own, they I don't know, they get a bunch of money or some kind of success. Even, if I do or I don't, I mean, yeah, of course I want to be successful, but if my friend gets to be successful before me, that's great. Yeah, I have a friend who's a millionaire now.
Yeah.
And
that's exactly my story too.
Yeah. I mean, our friendship hasn't changed at all. We still joke around, we still have a good time, we hang out, and I'm happy for him. I want him to get more.
Right, exactly. Yeah, that's awesome, man. And I think that's, if you want to just kind of bring it all back around full circle, right?
Hmm.
That's kind of the Merlin role that I'm loving these days. It's like, man, I am so excited to help other people figure this out.
Yeah.
Share the personal tips, share the business tips. And so like, man, I started a podcast. Just wrote my fourth book. I coach. I got, but it grew to like now I have a team, and I'm getting this to the next level. So like I still work on my end. There's content I love to create, but man, I also like I've got 18 folks on staff now because there's so much, and I'm
Wow.
finding as even in this sense, like I'm loving setting my team up to go help other people build their kingdoms. And I wasn't even directly getting credit for it, right? Like I didn't show up for that workshop, or I wasn't the individual coach. And so, yeah, man, I think seeing other people succeed, the more I grow, maybe it's more of my maturity, maybe it's more of God's character coming out in me, but I'm just so, it's not, it's like it's edging out. Not only am I as excited, I think I'm even more satisfied seeing somebody else. So I'm getting this like my team helping somebody else succeed. It's like double indirect. I'm seeing everybody light up and them saying like, you were so great, man, you were so great. And I just sitting behind the scenes saying, I'm glad I got to set that up. It's been phenomenal, man. So again, I still do some of my own. I'm
Of
not
course.
ever going to not directly help people, but yeah, seeing other people win with an abundance mentality, it's the ultimate. It's super fun.
God had a plan, and he says, I'm going to put you in this position, and all I'm asking is that you continue to spread my word along the way. Okay. He put people in your life that, helped you get through school and do all those other things you did. All you had to do is, go along for the ride and learn everything you possibly can. And God says, I'm gonna put you in that position. Just keep spreading my word. And all you had to do was say, I'll take the job. That's all you had to do.
That's
But
it.
but we had talked about, the sexy in business and all that. It's, let's face it, talking about God, being a Christian, that's not the sexy thing right now. Uh, and with that in mind, did you have any reservations of speaking of God, using His word, doing what you're doing because of the way the world is?
Yeah, great question, man. I mean, yeah, honestly, there was hesitation. Remember, I talked to my buddy, like, do I have to put this in my company name? Like, I don't want to deny or dishonor God or what he's doing in
Right,
my life.
right.
But at the same time, like, is this really there? It does limit options, right? There will be people who will be turned off, not ever get to know me, not actually, they'll make a bunch of assumptions about what kind of person I must be. I mean, Hollywood, one of the tragedies of Hollywood is like 99% of the time, if you see any person of faith of any kind, let alone Christian, they're the bad guy, right?
Of course. Yeah, that's the way it is.
They're the fanatic who's like mildly mentally unstable and violent,
Hmm.
judging and harsh. And it's like that isn't anything like the actual Christians I know. But all that to say, yeah, that's all that stuff gets stirred up if you kind of put that out there. So yeah, I think there is some, but I'll say two things what I'm learning on that. One is that for the first thing, I like this is a real belief of mine. I got this a quote hanging in my office here, and it says, "Obey God and leave all the consequences to Him." Like if I really trust Him to be good, if He
Hmm.
is who He actually says He is, then He's good and loving and just and kind and merciful and all that stuff. And that doesn't mean He's easy, right? Like He may push me like a good parent, not let me be sloppy, actually, make me learn discipline, but not in an angry way. And so anyways, I say all that to say, if I truly trust Him, then I'm going to honor Him and let Him figure that out.
Hmm.
That's the first part about it. And the second part about it is that, man, I'm finding as a Christian, people don't want to hear the abstract theology. But man, if you just talk about the individuals and the stories, and hey, here's the story. I love, people have a hard time. Here's Jesus. I love Jesus. Here's what Jesus said or did. and like just respond to that, I'm not getting anywhere near the same pushback to say, well, here's what Jesus did, and that inspires me, and so here's why I think we ought to do. That versus like, well, the official church doctrine. Again, there's something about the person of Jesus and the individual stories that I find is much more easy and appealing to people than starting with the grand broad. Now, if you want to get into complicated theology stuff, like those are interesting debates. I kind of like getting philosophical and be like, well, I wonder if it's more like this than that. But when I'm trying to make relationships and get to know people, man, sometimes it's just talk about the life of Jesus. And now I'll tell you, a lot of people don't know that, right? They think of the church or a priest or somebody that's kind of this institutional figure, and I'm like, we can talk about that. I have love and belief about how you manage those institutions, but man, the person, Jesus, the person, is so attractive, and so often people have never actually gotten to know him as a person.
Right.
That's a much easier sell, so to speak, right? Like, I don't really have to argue belief systems with you. Can you just meet this guy and listen to his life story and tell me what you think? And then suddenly we're having really interesting conversations. So I don't know, for what that's worth, that's really been a beautiful way of doing it. I don't put a lot of Bible verses on our workshops or trainings. It's just, what do you know? A good chunk of the stuff we teach people kind of has roots in the ancient wisdom of Jesus and the Old Testament Bible stuff. Like, okay, there's a lot of wisdom there. We should maybe tap that when we think about how to manage some of these things. So yeah, man, it's not what I expected, but man, it's my own version of a little fast food joint making a difference, right? Like, okay, I come alongside leaders, and some of them are Christians too, and some of them are not, but I'm finding they're drawn to this abundance, servant generosity, but pair that with excellence. I mean, I don't have to tell you, right? Just because we care and we've got an abundance mentality doesn't mean we get sloppy. Quite the opposite, right?
Right.
We bring our A game because we're doing it for somebody that matters, for people that matter. So, anyways, yeah, it is my ministry, if you will, right? Like I don't work for a church, but dang it, I think I'm in ministry full time, just pouring into people. So there's a lot of ways to be in ministry.
And the thing is because of the world we live in, you can preach to people without quoting the Bible and doing all that. Look at it like Aesop. When he wanted to get a lesson out there, he told a story.
Yeah.
And he used, sometimes it was animals or what have you, and then you learned a lesson at the end of it. And from what I remember, my studies, Jesus did that with the parables and things
Totally.
like that. So when you're dealing with the world like it is, you don't have to get out the Bible and say, okay, turn to John chapter 5 or whatever. You can use stories, or you just living your life as close to God as you possibly can. And the thing that bothers me is the people that oppose us. They look at us and think that we're supposed to be perfect, but we make mistakes. Okay, look at the king of look at the king of Israel, David. I mean, the guy was a murderer and he was an adulterer, but yet God used him, and look how great he became. Noah was a drunk.
Yeah. I mean, seriously, you could go down the list, right? I mean, that's
exactly
the heart of the story is not perfect people that get to be with God. It's broken humanity that God saves in anyway, and gives us a chance to be a part of gloriousness with him anyway, right? Like, yeah, man. This is not a story of us. Yeah, I'm with you. Sorry, hit a hot button, right? Like, oh, see, it must be false because Christians make mistakes. Like, dude, that's the whole point of this story. It's like, I'm messed up, you're messed up. That's why we need God. It's not the opposite. Yeah, that's a good word. That's a good word.
Exactly. Well, I worry about it sometimes myself, that, I'm going to mention God in my podcast. Is that going to mean people are just going to turn it off and not listen. It's not popular. I get that. My point is that I'm trying to help folks,
Yeah.
you know, in any way that I can, but I am a Christian. I'm not going to sit here and preach at you, but I'm going to give you these are the examples in my life, and God's the one that helped me along the way, helped me when I was at my lowest. I mean, I was a drunk, I was a drug addict, yeah, I was an adulterer, you name it. I probably did that sin, you know,
Yeah,
but
sure.
God got me out of it, and all the other mistakes I've made in my life, but God gets me out of it. You know, we just live our lives as best that we can and be an example and say, you know what, you're going to make mistakes, I'm going to make mistakes, but we don't have to dwell on those mistakes. Let's learn our lesson and move on. Don't make that mistake again.
Yeah, that's it. Well said.
Yeah.
Well
Oh,
said.
you said you had a podcast. What's the name of it?
Yeah. Oh, Upgrade Engines with Scott Wozniak. So I talk about 6 fundamental systems that just kind of underlie all the things we want to upgrade in our life. Doesn't matter what industry you're in, doesn't matter what particular mission or Camelot you're trying to build, right? So there are things like learning how to learn, and self-awareness, and how to make good decisions, and how to build healthy, high trust relationships. And like these all multiply. And so the better you get one, the better the others are. And so I riff on things I'm learning because that's what I'm on the journey of. Like I've grown a lot. What did I learn along the way, and what am I in the middle of learning? I bring in occasional buddies of mine who are kind of pushing the boundaries in one of those areas, and like, tell me what you're doing there. And so, yeah, man, Upgrade Engines with Scott Wozniak. You can find me on all the players, Spotify, Apple, etc. So yeah,
Well,
fun.
you can send me the link to that, right? And I can.
Yeah, and they can check out my website too. It's scottwozniak.com. That's SCOTTWOZNIAK.com. So scottwozniak.com. I'll send you the link that's got the podcast and my newsletter and all the fun stuff that I put out there. So yeah, if anyone's interested, that's a fun way to connect.
Yeah, I'm going to make sure that I get all those links in the description so it makes it easy for people to find you. But, something had popped into my head because I have talked to a few millionaires, and I do have a friend of mine that's a millionaire. Every one of them had something in common whenever I asked them how they got to be successful. And they said, if you're good at something, you have something good, give it away. And I'm like, what? Give it away? What are you talking about? Yeah, you give it away for free. Well, how in the world are you going to be successful from doing that? Real quick, so my buddy's an architect, and I mean, do you know who Tillman Fertitta is? He owns the Houston Rockets, and
oh yeah. Okay.
yeah,
I don't know him
big,
personally, but I've heard that. Yeah,
big businessman. Well, he was on his show Billion Dollar Buyer. And the premise of that particular episode was there was 2 teams, and they were competing to build this. It was like I don't remember what you call it, some French style. Did you
Restaurant
have to kind of
thing
do
in
that
your
in your life? Hotel. It's like a small thing. I don't know. But anyway, him and another buddy of his, they got on there. They ended up winning. And from that, he also got to redesign one of his other restaurants that's on the pier. But the thing is, I mean, he does stuff like that, and he's got a big project where he's building a lot of homes, and I mean, the guy's making some money. But when he really wanted to kickstart everything, he got on some website, and you get on there, and if you have something like what he does, architecture, or if you're a plumber or whatever, you offer up that service for free. And somebody had messaged him and said, hey, I need this job done, can you do it? And wasn't a little task, but he did it. What ended up happening is they loved it so much, and the word got around that all of a sudden all these people wanted his service, and that's when he got to really charge for it. He's making money hand over fist.
Yep.
So,
You say that because Truett Cathy, who was the founder of Chick-fil-A,
mhm.
he's famous for saying a lot. I've heard him say it myself. He's passed now, but he said it a bunch. If you help enough other people get what they want, eventually you'll get what you want. Like start by just giving it and helping, and it eventually, yes, that excellence comes back around. You'll end up with plenty yourself.
uh, Something else, I had to change my life quite a bit.
Sure.
Mentioned before, alcoholic, drug addict, the whole
Yeah.
whole 9 yards. And so I stepped away from that life, and I have friends that I've had, gosh, for 40 years,
Mhm.
and some of them still think they're in high school.
Yeah.
They don't want to stop partying. But
Yeah.
I mean, you're talking about people that I would give my life for. I love them as a brother, but I don't really hang out with them anymore because I can't be around the alcohol and the drugs.
Yeah. That's smart. Yeah.
So I say I love them from afar.
Mm.
I have a circle, and that circle is getting a lot bigger now, but it was very, very small. It was only a select few people that I let into my circle because they were successful. They had a plan. I wanted to follow what they were doing and become successful myself.
Yeah. Man, that's one of the most significant things I've done in my life is figure that out. And I've got a group that I get together with. There's four of us. Being intentional and thoughtful about who's really in and who and like pursue spending time with. And it
Mhm.
started in my 20s. So this is big part of like those when I was rethinking all this stuff. This guy was a big part of it. In fact, I was just on the phone with him right before we recorded this. Um, and we went to high school together and we started getting deep and connecting. And we went off and had adventures in college and we started reconnecting. But he was that guy. He's like, dude, this guy's got heart and dreams and values. And we were 20 sums, did some stupid stuff together, but he was also like, man, I want to be more like this guy. And then honestly, I don't know, probably our sophomore, junior year, maybe 3-4 years later, we were like, I just don't have other friendships like this. But we were in different states. We'd both gone to different states to go to college. We hardly ran across each other anymore, bumped into each other, and we're like, man. And he just said, well, dude, if it's really this valuable, why don't we pursue it? Like, why don't you and I just put it on the calendar and talk to each other on a regular basis instead of hoping we get around to calling each other? This is especially back in the days before cell phones, right? Like if you called me and I wasn't in, and then I'd call you back and you weren't in, and it might take weeks for us to both be in and get a phone call. He's like, let's just pick a time, and every couple of weeks we'll talk. And I was like, all right. And that grew into another guy, until now there's four of us and we get together. In fact, he and I talked one-on-one just before this. And literally, it's funny you mentioned this. The next thing I'm going to do after we finish talking here, in about 10 minutes, I'm getting together with the other three guys and we're talking about an annual retreat that we're going to take. And we get together and we talk about our lives and our plans. And we literally bring like a life plan together. And we say, hey, what are you doing with your business? What are you doing with your health? What are you doing with your family? Like, and we challenge each other and we celebrate and we eat too much steak and have just a weekend away. Yeah, I don't just happen to have a couple of good buddies like that. Like it has become one of the most important, insightful, energizing, like most of my big progress and insights of how I build my life and family have come out of this stuff. So dude, yes. Don't cross your fingers and hope you bump into the right people, right? Even when they're out of state, if you got the right guy, got the right gal, like go way out of your way, chase them down, pursue that, get what little bit you can with them. Because those deep relationships they're more satisfying and they're more insightful, right? Like I learned from them. We talked about like you can have money or grab some money and lose some relationships. Like there's no amount of money in the world that I would take me to burn these relationships.
Right.
Like these are my boys. And we plan to grow old talking about and dreaming and laughing together. And yeah, man, there's no question. There's just no question that is one of the most valuable, satisfying, strategic things that you can do with your life is get a circle. And it can be small. Honestly, I happen to be blessed. I have three other guys that doing this, but one guy, one gal, one true lifelong best friend like that that you want to be more like them and they want to be more like you, and you encourage each other to excellence, like have fun at the same time, bro, there's few things in the world more valuable than that. Maybe nothing. I mean, it's that epic. So yeah, I couldn't endorse that more highly, Kyle. That's super valuable. Well done.
Well, I know we don't have a lot of time left, but once again, could you tell me the website?
Yeah, scottwozniak.com. So SCOTTWOZNIAK.com. And from there, you can find all the links to all my stuff. And so that's just kind of my little home on the internet. So yeah, man, that's where you can get all my stuff. Thanks.
And also social media.
Yeah. So I'm on Facebook and I'm on LinkedIn. That's pretty much the only two I keep up regularly. I mean, I have an Instagram account, but I think it's been a year since I posted anything there. So yeah, but you can find me in both places. Just look Scott Wozniak. There's not a lot of Scott Wozniaks out there. So there is one other, and I'll give you one last. There's a guy,
A YouTuber.
Yes, he's a YouTuber, and he does video game YouTube reviews. He's funny. Warning: he is not safe for kids. The guy can't go every 3 sentences without dropping the F-bomb. But
oh God, I hate that.
But he's funny and he's clever. So there's Scott the Woz. So if it's not the young kid doing video games, then it's me. Those are the two Scott Wozniaks you'll find on the internet. Although
you do have a video game company, right?
I do love video games. I just don't have a YouTube channel talking about them. Yeah, and maybe someday, maybe I'll be Scott the Woz too, and we'll have a head-to-head. So yeah.
Well, I try to know my guests before they come on the show. So I will Google everyone. And number one, you answered one of my questions, and I didn't click on it, but I saw when I typed in your name, it said Scott Wozniak and Chick-fil-A. And I'm like, what the heck has he got to do with Chick-fil-A? But now I know.
Yeah.
And then this Scott the Woz came up, and I'm like, okay, I know that's not him.
I have gone by Woz as a nickname for many folks, but that's not my online handle. So yeah, those are the two Wozniaks, Scott Wozniaks out there. So yeah, we're not hard to find. That's the one advantage. The disadvantage, the other, maybe it's disadvantage / advantage, is I always know when it's a sales guy calling me, right? Like they get to my last name and just biff it. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not interested, buddy. Thanks for the offer though. So
yeah. All right. So you have the consulting company, you got the video games, you write music, and from what I understand, you're into extreme sports.
Oh, heck yeah, man. Love that stuff. Heli skiing, kite surfing, mountain biking, whitewater rafting. I mean, all that nonsense. What the new thing I want to try to learn, I've not done it yet, but it's on my okay, maybe I'll try that this year. Is e-foil surfing. It's like an electric surfboard. It's got its own motor, and then it's got these cool foils. If you've seen them in like high-end boats or racing, when you get to a certain speed, it pops up out of the water, and the only thing in the water is this cool little S-foil. And so you're floating about 12 inches above the water, ripping at a high speed on the water. So yes, that's the kind of bananas nonsense I'm into. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I literally say if I'm not at risk of wiping out, then I start getting bored. So like I do the activities that push me to the edge, and wipe out a fair amount. So yeah, that's what I do. It's for fun.
I got you, man. Hey, we've got to do this again, because I have a feeling there's a lot more we could touch on. So
sure. Hey man, thanks for having me. I really enjoyed it.
My pleasure. And I also want to thank all of you out there. If you happen by and this is your first time, please come back and hit that subscribe button. For my regulars, you know I love y'all. It's because of y'all I get to do this. So until the next one, please everyone take care. Be kind to one another. God bless and peace.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Listen to the Vibes. You can catch us on Buzzsprout or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts, and on YouTube. Follow us on Facebook at The Vibes Broadcast Network